Welcome to Andy and Ariane, where we are writing checks that our butts might not be able to cash. Maybe. Our mouths are writing checks that our butts might not be able to cash. That is the phrase that I was going for. Ari, Thomas Castellanos, new Florida State quarterback, Boston College transfer. He has helped us get into today's topic in ways that I could never have possibly imagined, because you set this up yesterday. You said, let's talk about some of these teams that we haven't talked about much all off season that might be able to dramatically improve because of what they did in the transfer portal. And you brought up Florida State specifically, and that was before Pete Nakos' story on Thomas Castellanos dropped. Now, I knew it was going to be fun to read because Pete called me right after the interview and said, this dude popped off. You're not going to believe what he said. But, oh, man, I could not even imagine how great it was. Let's start with the Bama one that's getting all the buzz. I'm excited, man, Castellanos said. People, I don't know if they know, but you go back and watch the game that I played in. We always start fast. I dreamed of moments like this. I dreamed of playing against Alabama. They don't have Nick Saban to save them. I just don't see them stopping me.
Okay, a lot to unpack
I love this guy.
A lot to unpack there. One, can I ask you something? Can you agree with what somebody said, but also think that the person who said it shouldn't have said it?
Yes.
Like, if that message came from a Georgia player, you would be analyzing it differently.
Of course. And when it came from Diego Pavia, I had no problem with it because Diego Pavia beat them last year.
No, I'm not saying problem with it. But I think that what happens when somebody says something like this is that we identify who said it, and we immediately break down the person's credibility in saying what he said, and sometimes we lose track of breaking down what he actually said. Like, I wrote an entire column last year after Vanderbilt beat Alabama, and I don't remember if you remember the premise. But the premise basically was that Alabama was like prime Tiger Woods. When Tiger Woods was on the final day wearing his Sunday red of a golf tournament, he had to play even par golf. He didn't have to be spectacular. If you go back and you look, I was on the golf course on Saturday and we were talking about this, and a buddy said, if you go back and look at Tiger Woods' final round from his last Masters win, and I believe it was 2019, he just played even Steven golf, wasn't spectacular, and everybody folded around him because of his presence. And I think that Alabama had an aura about them with Nick Saban on the sideline, where people just expected them to figure out a way to win because they have the greatest coach of all time on the sideline. And I think if a player goes into the Alabama game less intimidated, less afraid of Alabama, it takes away their superpower. When you look back at Tiger Woods' greatness as a golfer, you have all the iconic moments, right? Of the pumps and the long putts and the amazing, getting up and down and all the things that he's done. I'm not saying he's not a tremendous golfer, but his superpower to me was what he did in getting in other people's heads. And I don't know if that translates quite as much in football because golf is solely a mental game and football is a physical game. But I do wonder if the lack of Nick Saban on the sideline takes 5% away from Alabama's ability to win and close games that they wouldn't have otherwise lost in the past.
They did beat teams off the bus during the Saban era. That's 100% true. The same could be said of some of the recent vintage Georgia teams where they developed that aura too. So I'm with you. But this is also a Florida State team that went 2-10 last year.
No, and I don't think that Florida State's going to win the game by any stretch. That's not my point. The person who said it shouldn't have said it, but is he wrong is the question.
He's wrong. Well, we don't know if he's wrong. And that's what I want to get to. I don't know if Thomas Castellanos was wrong. If he's right about any of this stuff, because, Ari, that's not even the most interesting thing he said.
No, I know, but let's stick on this. We have a show. Let's stick on this. Even if Florida State loses the game 52-10.
Yeah.
Nick could I can't say, I'm not even going to try to pronounce his name. I can't.
Thomas Castellanos?
Castellanos. You know I can't say his name.
I don't know why.
I don't know either. There's certain words that I have a trouble with, kind of like restaurant. I can't spell it. Which is crazy because it's my favorite thing to do in the entire world. Could they lose 52-10, and could he still be right?
He could be right when it comes to a better team playing Alabama.
Right.
Yeah,
so that's what I think. It's like you don't have Nick Saban to save you. I think that's the entire story of Alabama's season this year. Can you finally get back to being Alabama after a year off that scares people off the bus, even though Nick Saban is not your coach? Like that, to me, I might write that today because I think that
go for it.
Interesting. Like,
I think when you see them coming out of the tunnel, they will be scary. Alabama's got a lot of good players, but I want to talk about Florida State. You brought this up yesterday, and it was a really interesting question. Now, we have Jameis apologists in the chat going, oh, wow, you guys finally talk about FSU, and of course it will be negative. Laugh out loud. You went 2-10 last year.
We probably should have talked more negatively about them over the course of last year.
We just stopped talking about them pretty much after the guy refused to eat the dog poop. We just stopped talking about it.
We did talk about Florida State all the time. That dog poop thing lasted on our show at least the entire season, right?
At least halfway through the season.
What do people want us to do?
Yeah. Florida State's going to be great this year. You guys are going to win the national title. Now, I realize there are some people here on these college football internets that will say that will make videos that just say what you want to hear. Unfortunately, you've not come to one of those shows, and I'm sorry.
Well, the thing, too, is that like we were going to talk about Florida State heading into this show before Castellanos said that.
Yes, and we were.
This morning that we were going to talk about Florida State. We talked about them yesterday with the intention of really trying to break down what they're going to be, because I actually believe I've got a buddy here who's a huge FSU fan and grew up in Destin. And like, if you ask him, he doesn't know what they're going to be. Their win total is 6.5 or 7.5. No one knows whether it's under or over. Like, who knows what they're going to be? Any more than they were going to be 2 years ago.
Obviously, I live around a bunch of Florida State fans too, and none of them have a concrete idea of what they think this season's going to be. And I don't blame them, because how could you possibly know after going from 13-0 in the ACC, get screwed out of the college football playoff, to 2-10? Like, not a single one of us predicted that fall.
And that was the single worst fall of the playoff era, right?
Oh, yeah. It's got to be one of the worst ever.
Because
like the Auburn one where they won the national title in 2010 and then Chizik got fired 2 years later, that was 2 years later when they went 0-8 in the SEC. Like, this was the following year.
And also their coach ended up getting fired very closely.
Right. And this coach got a massive extension before the 2-10 season because, this is where we go back to Alabama, Alabama inquired about him and their job.
Yeah. I think Mike Norvell is one of the most interesting coaches, and maybe we're Jameis apologist is right from this standpoint, because I don't even know where you stand on just like him as a coach. Like, where are you with him? Like, is he passing the test? Do the last 2 years average out to 2, 8, and 4 years, and then it's just status quo there? Like, do you think he's doing a good job, and do you think he's because like I
have no idea, Ari. I mean, the rational person in me says that this guy coached them to an ACC title, to a 13-0 record, and that it's not, he didn't just forget how to coach. Like, the rational part of me says last year was just a really bad year where everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. I just don't see how that is represented, because the rest of his career doesn't look like that. Like, he won at Memphis, which is, before he was winning there, was a hard place to win. And then Florida State got better and better each year he was there until it culminated in that ACC title. So, to me, rational person, it has to be better. And that he didn't forget how to coach. And that they just ran into a Murphy's Law situation where everything that could have gone wrong went wrong. Has to be.
Yeah. I think that this is interesting because there's one thing that I've been critical with. And I don't know if this is right or wrong, or if it'll turn out to look stupid in the long run. But if you remember, one of the first columns I wrote at On3 was the Monday night game, or was it the opener? I can't remember what day of the week.
They lost to Boston College. It was a Monday night game. Yeah.
So the Monday night game, I thought I was just
Thomas Castellanos.
I was just going to watch, some trash TV with my wife, and we were watch the game and then go to bed. And then all of a sudden, Florida State was getting run off the field. I was like, all right, well, boo, I'm going to go out there and write a column. And the column I wrote was, this is the price you pay for building your roster for last year. And that Florida State is just going to have to live in a world, as long as they're building their roster this way, with really high ups and really low lows. And like that to me is the consequence of it, right? Like, you lose all those transfers that you got. Some were 2-year guys. Was first 2 or 3 years? Was he 3? I can't remember, but I know
2. But they had guys that had been there for 4 years. I mean, Jordan Travis was a transfer.
Yeah.
But he transferred under Willie Taggart. So, I mean,
it's really, really good, though, because Johnny Wilson was good, because Keon Coleman was good, because Trey Benson was good, because Braden Fisk was good, and all those guys, for the most part, unless I'm misspeaking here, I can't remember. It's been
I mean, those are some of the best players, and those are guys who transferred in.
Yes. And when they all walk out the door at the same time, if you don't have the foundation of elite level high school recruiting to back you up, when all your 1-year rentals leave, what do you think is going to happen? So you might have a bunch of great years, but you might have lower lows than we're used to seeing from teams that compete at that high level. Because there's one thing about college football that is much different than the NFL. In the NFL, you have ebbs and flows based on which quarterbacks are playing well or which rosters are, but like the best team in the NFL changes dramatically. Now, the Chiefs have been one of the best teams in the NFL for a long time because they have maybe the greatest quarterback who ever played on their team. But for the most part, the good teams around them shift. In college football, they don't shift often because traditionally it's the teams that recruit really well, and those teams recruit really well every year, which means they always have good players regardless of who leaves. Now that's changing a little bit. And I'm just wondering if you think Florida State should be a team that is as transient as it is. And we had Mike Norvell on our old show at The Athletic, and I asked him, do you view yourself as a transient program? And he kind of talked would like to talk to him one-on-one and just be like, hey, are you okay with this? Is this what you want? Or do you feel like in order for you to be successful long-term at Florida State, that eventually you have to figure out how to sign top 10 classes again? Because Florida State was a team when I grew up in this industry that was a fixture in the top 5 of the recruiting rankings constantly. And I don't know how psychology of these teenagers work, Andy. They've been out of the game for so long that the kids that are coming up now don't remember what they were in 2005 and 2010 and even 2013. I just don't know if this is the healthiest way to sustain long-term success at a place that demands it year over year.
It probably isn't, but it's sort of a dance with the girl who brung you situation. That's how they got better when they were down. And so you keep doing that. Now, the idea was keep doing that until it bolsters your high school recruiting, or allows you to bolster your high school recruiting, which that sort of bottomed out with 2025. But if you look at 2024, that was as good of a class as they'd put together out of the high school ranks in terms of what the guys were rated. But that was I believe in the On3 industry rankings, they were number 12. So it felt like they were moving back up. And
they were number 12 in the 2024 rankings.
Yes.
Was that the class that coincided with the great? Yeah, it was. That's the class that coincided with the great.
Yes, right after the great season. Yeah. So it felt like the build was going on and was going to continue, and that they were going to then add the piece of elite high school recruiting to being really good out of the transfer portal. And then last year happened. Now, there are a lot of things that happened last year. Again, it's a Murphy's Law situation. DJU, probably the chief complaint there, that taking DJ Uyunglele at quarterback set them back considerably. But it wasn't just that.
But
they were bad in a lot of ways last year.
That's the thing that blows my mind about the whole thing. Is that, like, do we view and it's going to nice segue into this conversation that we're going to have on the show today, which is, what do you heed more? What do you respect more? The transfer class that Florida State was able to assemble going into the 23 season, or the mistake that you make at the quarterback position in the transfer portal a year ago that tanks your season? And it's like, do you view Mike Norvell as a mad scientist right now who went out and, like, first of all, Florida State had a really good transfer class this year. I don't know if there's like somebody that's as can't miss as Keon Coleman was when they got him. But do you view Florida State as a sleeper team this year that we're not appreciating enough of their haul coming into the year? And maybe they are an 8 or 9 win team and we're overanalyzing what happened a year ago. Or do you think
it's entirely possible they could be an 8 or 9 win team? The thing is, like, you can be an 8 or 9 win team in the ACC, and that doesn't really get you anything. Like, they could lose to Florida, Miami, Clemson, and Alabama, and that's an 8 and 4 team.
Yeah. I think that if you ask Mike Norvell in private right now, do you take 8 and 4 right now? He goes, yeah, right?
Of course. You just went 2 and 10.
You need 8 and 4.
Yeah.
But then again, then all of a sudden, you're 8 and 4, and what would that be? Year 5?
Right.
And then all of a sudden you take a step back and you have one great year, and then you're not anywhere further along as a program than you were when you took over.
But you can't look at it that way. Like, they gave him the contract they gave him. Alabama was sniffing around. We don't know if Norvell or Kalen DeBoer was the first choice. It doesn't really matter. Alabama was sniffing around both of them. So Florida State did what they did for a reason. You're saddled with the contract now. Like, you cannot fire Mike Norvell. And I'll point out, Mike Norvell did give back some of the money.
Respect
because he's not stupid. Like, he understands the optics of this.
Yeah. I don't know how many people would have done that anyway.
Yeah. So, I mean, it really depends on how this group congeals together. And this is what we're going to talk about with the other teams we're going to talk about today. Now, this is not just a Florida State thing, because we're going to talk about it with Ole Miss, with Missouri, with Oregon. It's how this group, those groups come together. Lane Kiffin has been really good at having a lot of transient guys and having a lot of portal guys, and the team plays well together consistently. Florida State, we saw what can go absolutely wrong with that. But a lot of teams are trying this. I mean, Texas Tech is trying this. You just wrote a column about the pressure that Joey McGuire's under because of this portal class at Texas Tech. So this is not limited to Mike Norvell, but obviously this is one of the weirder test cases, because you had so much success because of the portal, and then a ridiculously terrible season because of the portal. But let's talk about who they got. I mean, so Gavin Sawchuk, who you saw running the ball for Oklahoma, Squirrel White, who was a receiver at Tennessee,
Rivers' favorite player.
Yeah, Deuce Robinson, who was at USC, who looks like $1 million, but I think USC fans would tell you they don't feel like he played up to his potential there.
Look like $1 million though, doesn't he? Like that is, you know,
I know for you, he's one of those. This was an elite recruit that I can't let go of him being an elite recruit.
That's what I was just gonna say. I cannot let go of it. You want to know why? Look at him. Just look at him. Andy, you looked at him?
It matters what you do on the field, not
but I'm
just
not
how
let
you
go
look.
of somebody who looks like that yet.
Yeah. So I get you. I understand you. By the way, if you're watching on Twitter right now, come join us on YouTube. Much more fun. You can make fun of me and Ari in the chat in real time. And honestly, you want to be part of this chat. These guys are awesome. Our favorite people in the whole world. They'll become your favorite people in the whole world too. So,
and we're talking about teams going into next season that could surprise us. That might be one of your favorite teams. Come hear what we have to say.
Exactly. So come join us on YouTube. The link you'll need is right under the tweet that you're watching right now. So hit that one and we'll see you on YouTube. Now, Ari, what does this mean for Florida State? Thomas Castellanos does not want to be DJU 2.0. Obviously, he comes in. He's played for Gus Malzahn before. Gus Malzahn is Florida State's new offensive coordinator. He was UCF's head coach. Castellanos played at UCF. Let's hear some more of what Castellanos said. I didn't have nearly as much talent as I do here, talking about playing at Boston College. I didn't have the guys. But over here, I have some of the best athletic guys. I'm not the fastest one on the team over here. I'm not the most athletic guy on the team. What he's saying is he was at Boston College. So just being around these guys and just instilling in their heads the winning mentality, that's what we can do. They've got the team. They got the guys. All they needed was a leader in place to lead them. We need to get back to that mentality of ACC championship, to a good playoff run, to a national championship. For me, I know I have the skill set to be a Heisman contender, to be up in New York. This guy has so much confidence. Here's another one. This is what he told our Pete Nakos. I feel like I tore the ACC up by my damn self for the last 2 years, and now I'm with a squad. I hope people don't think Florida State is going to be the same team it was last year, because we have weapons. People can't just sit back in zone coverage and watch me. I hope 1/10 of this is true. I love the confidence. Love it.
Yeah. Does somebody talking like this make you buy into them?
I've seen him play. He's pretty good. But I don't know that he's been that transcendent that, like, when Pavia says this stuff, like, I've seen Pavia go to Auburn and win as New Mexico State's quarterback. I've seen Pavia beat Alabama. I've seen Pavia go toe-to-toe with Texas. So when Diego Pavia says it, I'm like, all right, I'm in. Thomas Castellanos, what he's saying is he was doing it with one arm tied behind his back at Boston College. Now, I imagine his former Boston College teammates probably disagree with that.
He's been fun to watch.
He has been fun to watch.
And I think if you, I think I could buy into the notion that if you put him together with a higher level of athlete, that he has more of an opportunity to shine. The question that I have, and I think it's a fair one, is who are those players who are going to elevate him? When you talk about some of the best players in college football this year, and you think about the receivers and the running backs and the offensive line, I'm not saying that Florida State's team stinks, but who comes to mind? Who's the person that's in that national conversation? Is some of the
well,
best
that's the thing.
players
You need Squirrel White or Deuce Robinson or Davin Sawchuk to be those people.
And all of those guys are unproven assets that came through the transfer portal. None of those guys were Keon Coleman.
But all of those guys were highly touted recruits.
They were. All of whom weren't very productive in their actual playing. And I'm trying to be the devil's advocate here because, you know, I get all excited about Deuce Robinson. It's like, to me, Deuce Robinson is the type of player that can completely change your team if he reaches his potential. And I don't know.
Thomas Castellanos also has Coach Gus now, Danny says in the chat. It makes a big difference. Okay, but here's the thing. Which Gus Malzahn is he getting? Because if it's the one from last year at UCF, this is not going to go well. If it's the old Gus Malzahn, whose offense moved quickly, kept defenses off balance, then yes, it will go well. Last year at UCF, that offense was slow. It was predictable. It was not what you've come to expect from Gus Malzahn over the years. So was that because of the personnel, or was that because of how Gus has evolved as a coach? We're going to find out.
I can buy into it being much better. I can buy into it. How much better? I don't know that I would think more than 8 wins.
But 8 wins is great when you only won 2 last year.
Yeah. But in the spirit of this conversation, which is who can be much better than we're giving them credit for, is that, does Florida State reaching 8 wins qualify for that?
I think it does. I think when you went 2-10, if you can, a 6-win improvement is a 6-win improvement. I don't care. That's a big deal. And let's say they are competitive or win some of those games that we talked about might be losses on the schedule. Like whether it's Alabama, Clemson, Miami, or Florida. Like if they're in those games or they win one of those games, that just says they're back where they need to be.
You know what the most ironic part about this whole conversation is that a large portion of Castellanos' comments to Nakos kind of threw BC under the bus in terms of, you know, I'm the only guy there. I was the fastest guy on the team. I was the most athletic team. I basically tore up the ACC by myself, all those things he said. But I have a feeling that right out of the gate, And this isn't even a commentary on how good I believe Florida State's going to be. He's going to feel that exact same way when he plays Alabama.
These guys are so much faster. These guys are so much.
He's playing a team that has much better players than the team that he has, and I don't even know that that's a debate. Like that's not even a negative.
Yeah, Alabama's pretty loaded, especially on the defensive side of the ball.
Like Alabama is going to have an advantage at every single position, right? Except maybe quarterback, and even then, maybe quarterback.
We don't know about Alabama's quarterback.
At Alabama. So
whether we think it's Ty Simpson. That's the assumption, and we don't know how that's going to go. But this is also assuming Ty Simpson's the starter at Alabama. This is his chance to show, hey, I should have had this job all along.
But if Thomas Castellanos thinks that his Florida State teammates are going to go carry the team down the field against Bama, I think he's going to find out in the first quarter that's probably not how it's going to go.
It's going to be fascinating because listen, here's the thing though. I will say before we get too high on anybody, remember how high we were on Florida State going into last season. And remember how that worked out.
I remember being nervous about it.
I don't think I was that nervous about it. I didn't think they were going to necessarily just dominate and win the national title, but I thought they'd be one of the best teams in the ACC because they did bring guys back. They had guys who'd played really key roles on that very good team. It was miscalculated how bad DJU would be.
It was also a collective disaster because I think once they lost in week 1, the team gave up.
Yeah, they really did not really come back from Ireland. Like they lose to Georgia Tech, and they were so flat against Boston College early. And again, Castellanos, so he gets credit for that one for sure. But yeah, they're a very interesting team going forward. That Florida State team is going to be one of the more fascinating teams in the country this year. I think they have to be better. I think they'll probably be significantly better. I don't know if that means they'll be one of the better teams in the ACC, but we'll find out.
I do want to do a column at some point in the next 2 weeks, like ranking the NCAA teams I'm most excited to play with. That's always fun. And Florida State might make that list for me because they have a mobile quarterback and some weapons like Deuce Robinson that will be good in the game, regardless of whether or not he's good in real life. Although I don't know how, you're the only one who can answer this, how much the short quarterback impacts passing, because that might be.
I don't know if I got to play it enough to really tell how big of an impact that was, but they do say that you will, but it's only really if you put him under center. So as long as you have him in the gun, which in Florida State's offense, he will be in the gun most of the time. So the playbook you get for Florida State will be mostly gun.
Yeah, but
I think you'd be all right.
They make him, and they will accurately fast. Florida State would be a fun team to play with.
Yeah, as the Avery Johnson comes on the screen. Speaking of accurately fast.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about some of these other teams that we have not talked about much this offseason that may have bolstered themselves through the portal. I want to talk about Ole Miss because I don't think, other than when we interviewed Austin Simmons, and when we interviewed Austin Simmons, who's Ole Miss's rising starting quarterback, we were like, man, this dude's impressive. And of course, you and I saw him in person against Georgia last year and was awesome. So Florida State loses a lot of that. So they went out and got Walter Nolan. They got Princely Umanmielen on the line of scrimmage. They had Chris Paul, who was awesome last year, to transfer. Those guys were all gone. Jared Ivey, who'd been there for, actually transferred from Georgia Tech years earlier, but he'd been there. He's gone. A lot of the guys that we thought would be the difference that would get them into the playoff are gone. Jackson Dart, gone. First-round draft pick. I'm not sure they're falling off, Ari. If we look at their transfer portal class, Ole Miss got a lot of the dudes that a lot of people wanted in the portal.
How many did they take this year?
They took above, north of 30, I believe.
That's right. I thought it was 30.
It might be right at 30. I think it's either 30 or 31, but it's a lot. And some of those guys are ones that we thought, if they wherever they wind up, they're going to be difference makers. Like Luke Haas, the tight end from Arkansas, was one that we thought would be a difference maker. Where, oh no, they had 32 transfers in.
32.
So, 32. So that's my question is, like, they got Deshaun Stribling, who was Oklahoma State's best receiver last year. Like, they got Keywan Lacey, the running back from Missouri. They got Princely's brother, Prince Will Umanmielen, came from Nebraska. So
it just feels right to have one of those guys on the team, doesn't it? There's
a third brother too, by the way.
Is he younger and can he transfer in?
Eventually, yes. It sounds like they only want to have one at a time, but yeah.
That's great. That's good to hear.
But like, we've sort of assumed that Ole Miss drops off here. I don't know that we should assume that.
I think the reason why people assume that is last year's transfer class had like 10 notable names that everybody knew.
Right, and it was these are the issues you really needed to fix. You went out and fixed them with these people, and now those people are gone.
And those people were recognizable coming in. Like, I know the names that you just mentioned, but like, there's no Walter Nolan in this class, right? Like,
correct.
There's no Juice Wells in this class, right? Like,
Luke Haas might be. He's a tight end, obviously. He's not a receiver, but he might be. Stribling, maybe.
He may be. He's not at this point in the year. Like last year when they got Juice Wells in June, it was like, holy crap.
Yeah. Caleb Odom from Alabama is the one I'm curious about, because he was one that the Alabama folks really loved when he got there, but they never really found a role for him. He's a big receiver. He might actually be a tight end, but he's 6'4", 220. So that's one that
Caleb Odom is
maybe, but that's another one of those. He was an elite recruit, but what does that mean?
Yeah, but I also think there's a little extra juice too when somebody comes from Bama, isn't there?
Is there though? Because wouldn't they just be playing at Bama?
No, if they were Ole Miss, I think that there's like a little extra for them to wind up at Ole Miss coming from Bama. It gives them a little extra juice. I'm not saying it just means that he's going to be good because he's from Bama, but I do think that there's like always an underlying motivation or underlying sweetness to that, I think.
Well, I think this is one that we may be underestimating this year, because you see Ole Miss kind of like hanging around in the top 20, near the top, near 20-ish with a lot of the preseason polls. I don't think anybody really knows what they're going to be. And the question with Ole Miss, and this is the question we've been asking since Lane Kiffin started there, and really kind of came in reshaping the roster through the portal, is, do they do this every year? Can they continue to be good while having this much turnover in the portal? Or do they have a year like 2024 Florida State at some point down the road?
Yeah. They have a really good quarterback, so my hope for them is that they don't have that experience.
Well, you and I think he's a really good quarterback because we saw one drive, but
I also
think
if Kiffin thought he wasn't a really good quarterback, they would have behaved differently in the portal.
That's true. They're not shy about going and getting somebody if they think they need it.
Guy, they didn't get anyone.
Yeah,
well, they got Pierce Clarkson, by the way. I don't know if you remember that guy. That was
Steve Clarkson's son, the QB guru's son. Yeah, Pierce Clarkson was at Louisville. So
so I think that like they have a much higher floor than Florida State last year, but it probably looks to me like a 9-3-ish type team again,
which is weird. What if they're not? What if they're 10-2 and they make the playoff? Like the last year's team was supposed to. What if this year's team does?
I think that would be a nice little redemption arc for Lane Kiffin, because as much as I mean, like the thing that's so interesting is that I think he's a really good coach. Okay. And I think that your point is correct in that he has proven time and time again that he can take a transient roster and make it a functional unit. Like they play well together for the most part.
Yeah.
They blew it last year. There's no other.
They did.
They absolutely.
That team, had it gotten into the playoff, could have gone very deep in the playoff and might have been one of the teams that could have competed with Ohio State.
I think that team playing peak performance, that team that we saw when they hosted Georgia, could have won the national title.
Correct.
could have won it. Not just competed with Ohio State, could have won it.
I agree. They did, and the fact that they lost to Kentucky and lost to Florida is mind-bending to me.
And to me is a abject failure. And I hate to, when I say these things, people get mad, but like, honestly, if you're an Ole Miss fan, you might be offended by that. But like, am I wrong? Like,
no,
that's like a real...
as Scott in the chat, and Scott's clearly a verbaler, a fan of our friends Dan and Ty at the Solid Verbal. Win your clunkers. Win your clunkers. And that's the part Ole Miss has to learn. That's the next step in Ole Miss's development. If they want to be an elite program, if they want to be good every year, you got to figure out how to do it.
Almost like the opposite, because Ole Miss has really traditionally done a good job of winning the games they're supposed to, and then they would lose the games they're
right. And now like the Georgia game was the ultimate flip that on its head scenario, and then they go to Florida after an open date and lose.
It just sucks because in that stadium, you were there. We were on the sidelines at the end there. Like, that was we finally did it moment as a program. And to not be able to cash that in with a playoff berth is just devastating. So if they were to get to it this year, I think that would make for a nice redemption arc, and like Lane Kiffin could hold his head high on that. I don't know that I buy that'll happen. There's too many good teams in the SEC this year, I think, to go that far. But like, I think this leads us into the best class, in my opinion. It's not the biggest class, so it's not number one. And I don't even know if this counts as a team that we haven't talked a lot about, but I do think that we've overlooked them. And that's Oregon, Andy. I mean, if you go look at Oregon's...
Oh, yeah, no, I think you're right, because I think our assumption is Oregon can't possibly be as good as they were last year. They were the best team in the regular season last year. They were the clear number one seed in the playoff. They won the Big Ten. Had they not had to play Ohio State right out of the gate in Rose Bowl, probably would have gone into the playoff and would have gotten closer to a national title. I don't know that they're going to be that different, and they might actually be better based on what they got this year.
Yeah. I mean, obviously a lot is hanging on the shoulders of Dante Moore, right? And I think that we aren't 100% clear on what that looks like. But if Dante Moore went into obscurity after being a 5-star prospect that was thrust into a dysfunctional situation as a true freshman at UCLA and actually got really, really good. Like, has anybody stopped to question what if Dante Moore is a top 5 quarterback in college football this year? I think that we've taken him for granted, or at least sold him short of his potential. I don't know for sure what that's going to look like. I'm very intrigued and excited to see what it looks like, but I have pretty high hopes for him. But then when you look at the players that they brought in, they have the most proven, really good players coming in of anybody. They don't have the largest class. I think they have 11 or 12 incoming transfers this year.
They have 11. And that's kind of like Ohio State last year. Ohio State, I think, had 8.
Which to me is an assertion of health, right? You are recruiting well enough where you do not need to bring in 30 guys to make sure you don't have a disaster. They have a roster they feel good about. They didn't have to go get a quarterback. And they were able to bring in pieces that were difference makers at a lower level, meaning amount. They got better players at less positions because they had less needs than other teams, which is the healthiest way to do it. To me, this is the perfect draft. This is the perfect transfer class. I know that people get excited about 30 and 26 and 34. I don't know if I were a coach, if I would want 34 players to come in. So if you look at the 11 players that they brought in, Emmanuel Pregnon, the offensive lineman, and we don't talk about offensive linemen on the pod.
But he would have been USC's best returning offensive lineman. Now he starts for Oregon.
Mekhi Hughes, who I think is college football's leading rusher last year.
Returning rusher,
Returning rusher, right. Not Ashton Genty by any stretch of the imagination, but was one of the 3 best running backs at the lower level. And I think is going to be highly productive. They brought in Isaiah World, an offensive tackle from Nevada, who I think analysts are saying was the second or first best offensive tackle transfer prospect in the entire thing. They also brought in Bear Alexander, which I think is a speculative play.
Yeah, I mean, that one it made me shake my head
hands up, but also too, what if he's good? Can we stop to think like what if he's good?
I think we know by this point. I think we've seen. what we need to see.
All
But
right.
we'll see.
Sorry for
I mean,
bringing him up.
Dan Lanning knows this better than I do.
This wouldn't be a podcast if I didn't say his name, Andy. You
I
can't
know.
nag me
I
for
know.
that. And then, of course, Dylan Thieneman, the safety from. You like how I can say Thieneman, but I can't say Castellanos? Isn't that hilarious? Like
It
how
is
the
very
human
strange.
brain
I
works.
like, but you've got the Castellanos thing down now. I think
Yeah.
you've practiced.
Wait till tomorrow. But I think might be an All-American safety. So you think about safety, 2 offensive linemen, interior defensive linemen, electric running back, and feeling pretty good about your quarterback. Not to mention they have some pieces in place already. I think it's a shame that Evan Stewart got injured because he would have been, I think, a really productive and important piece of their offense this year. He's out with was it a knee injury, Andy? Did he blow his knee out in spring?
I believe it's a knee injury, a patella tendon, I think.
Yeah. So, but Oregon, you have number 6. So you were a little bit higher. But if I could go back and like look at maybe the rankings, I might think, because I think I put them at 9. I think 6 is probably more appropriate.
It just depends because that cluster at the top of the Big Ten, whoever wins the Big Ten is going to be in the top 3.
I think I
possibly
put
number
Illinois
1
ahead of Oregon, though. And maybe that'll turn out to be right. I don't know. But I have Oregon in my playoff. Excuse me.
Yeah. And they should be, and we should probably consider them a perennial playoff team as long as Dan Lanning's there. The question really is, are they going to be better than last year? And it's tough because, they lose a first-round defensive tackle and a first-round offensive tackle, and they had a lot of talent that left. But to your point, most of the transfers they took are instant impact guys who were proven at their last place, and they're plugging in alongside guys that were very highly rated recruits that have been developing at Oregon. Like, that's the model that we think is supposed to be the one that's going to work most consistently. Now, we don't know that yet because this is basically a new era, but that is the model that we suspect is going to be the best model.
Oregon is a stock I would invest in. I think that you missed the boom, the pre-Dan Lanning buying opportunity, where it was still very speculative. I think it's still a growing company that will continue to rise. You're not going to get the 10x right out of the gate like you might have gotten if you bought it right when he was hired. But this is a team that I feel fairly certain will win a national title in the next decade at some point. That would be a fun show. Which teams do you think will win a national title in the next decade? Who would you buy? I think that would be fun. I think Oregon would be.
Why don't we do that tomorrow?
You want to? So look at that.
Yeah.
Workshopping the shows live 2 days in a row. You want to talk about like money podcasting? You want to talk about
hell yeah.
This is the conversation that Andy and I have when the show's over every day. What should we talk about?
I think it's really interesting. There was a stat that David Stern, in his period as NBA commissioner, which was a very long one, only awarded 8 different teams title, like handed the Larry O'Brien trophy to 8 different teams, 8 different franchises. And then Adam Silver in his time has already handed the Larry O'Brien trophy to 9 different franchises. Like, I'm kind of wondering, are we going to enter into a period like that where over the next 10 years, are we going to see 8 different national champs as opposed to 3 different national champs?
Yeah, what would your number be if you had to guess for the next 10 years? How many different teams will win it? I have a
7.
guess. I would say 6.
Yeah, which okay, we'll have to go through the list, but I think 2010 to 2019, that's a 10-year period. How many different teams do we get? We got Auburn, Alabama, Florida State, Clemson.
We'll do 14 to 14. You don't want to mix
LSU. There were 5. There were 5 in that 10-year period.
Yeah, but that 10-year period also had a blend of systems.
Yeah. So do
14 to 24.
14 to 20. So the college football playoff era.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ohio State.
Oh, I didn't miss 6. So 6 in 2010 to 2019. So Ohio State,
Bama, Georgia,
Clemson, LSU, Michigan.
That's it.
6.
6 is pretty good.
6 is good. Like 7 or 8 would be even better because you like who then jumps into that mix.
I think if you did the 2014 to 24 season, you would have 6-2 in the NFL, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Chiefs
I
won
believe
it
so
3 times, and I think the Eagles won it twice in that period.
Yes. Yep.
So you'd have 6.
So look, parity's hard everywhere.
But
the NBA's got a nice little thing going right now.
I never would have thought, though, that the NFL and the college football would have the same number of total champions over a 10-year period. That's encouraging. And that's
right, because the NFL has a lot better system in place to ensure parity than
and
college
that's
football.
Funny because that also coincided with college football's most lopsided talent dispersion.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So I think that's going to be a very interesting.
Maybe it's actually 8 now.
Maybe it is. And the question is, who are the other ones? Or, like, is Alabama even one of them anymore? I mean, that's the great question. But let's stick to today. Let's stick to teams we're not talking about, transfer portal classes. Let me throw another SEC team at you.
We got a show.
We got a show.
Yeah. What's the next?
Let me throw one more SEC team at you. Missouri. Obviously, Bo Prabula made headlines because he left Penn State before the playoff run and transferred to Missouri. And we've talked about that. We talked to James Franklin about that. Obviously, James Franklin wasn't mad at Bo Prabula. Bo Prabula is a guy we were very excited about. We thought he was going to be Penn State starting quarterback this year. When it became clear that Drew Aller was coming back, that job wasn't open anymore, so he went looking. He's a very athletic guy. We know Missouri has a manageable schedule. Does Missouri stay as consistently good as they have been the last couple of years under Eli Drinkwitz? That's the question.
They did get one of the best portal pickups, right? Is Damon Wilson viewed as one of the best portal pickups?
I would think so.
Ohio State wanted him, so that's good. I mean, that's good to see when other teams want him. They lost their best player.
Luther Burden, yes.
They lost their best player. But Mizzou was gifted the easiest schedule in the SEC. And they had a very easy schedule last year. And I wonder if we'll look back at this era and say they had a transfer class going into the 24 season that was good enough to do better than they did. And if they'll look back and once the SEC schedule reshuffles and they don't get as easy of a draw as others.
Kevin Coleman's the one I would watch. Kevin Coleman was Mississippi State's best receiver last year, and he's at Missouri this year. So I think there's a chance Missouri's not bad, like 9-10 win type team.
Yeah, like what they were last year, 9-10 win team.
I mean, the problem was they got smoked by Texas A&M, and they lost to South Carolina. So when they played teams that were kind of equal, they didn't look that good.
Yeah, but also too, Mizzou's probably very happy with the notion that Texas A&M and Auburn and those teams are viewed as equals, because it wasn't so long ago where Mizzou was kind of an afterthought in the conference. I think Eli's done a good job.
Oh, he's done a very good job, and I'm just wondering, are we underestimating? It's the same thing with Ole Miss. Are we just underestimating a coach who has demonstrated a fairly good track record of success, and this one, even more than Lane Kiffin, has a more manageable schedule. So
I guess it kind of also depends on how much you trust Bo Prabula, and we saw a taste of it. And I wonder if there's a difference between being a change of pace quarterback who comes in where everybody expects to run, and then you throw a little bit, and then being the every down guy.
Yeah. And look, we've seen this a couple different ways. We've seen Nick Fitzgerald leave and was okay at Mississippi State. We saw Will Levis leave Penn State, he was that guy. Will Levis was that guy at Penn State and wound up being a very good quarterback at Kentucky.
The question I guess I have for you. So I have a Penn State take.
Okay.
I thought Trace McSorley was the perfect college quarterback.
Yes.
And it's not somebody that a lot of people will look back in 10 years and go, wow, remember watching Trace McSorley? But as somebody,
Trace McSorley and Connor Shaw from South Carolina, kind of peas in a pod, great college quarterbacks.
Yeah.
Perfect for their schools.
And I watched a lot of the Ohio State, Trace McSorley, Penn State games in person. Like, if Bo Perbula could be Trace McSorley, very slippery, athletic as hell, can move the chains with his legs in critical third downs, just be a thorn in the side for 4 quarters and hit some big throws in crucial moments. Like, I think that would be a pretty good proposition. Like, is that a fair comparison?
I would agree.
Yeah.
I think that's a great comparison. Yes, that if he's that at Missouri, Missouri's going to have a really good year. Like,
right.
Period. And
also, Penn State was more than willing to go into next season as with him as their guy, which I think is a good thing.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
if Aller leaves, Perbula's the starter at Penn State. We're not having this conversation. Like, we didn't have that conversation during the playoff, but that's sort of the way things worked out, and nothing anybody can do about it now.
Yeah. We've got one more, I think, Andy, but could I ask you one question before we get to the last one?
Sure. Yeah.
I have a toxic trait. I ask somebody if I can ask them a question before I ask them constantly.
Can I ask you a question? Do you have any banaka?
All my friends are just like, can you just ask the question, asshole? Like, I don't need you to preface every question you ask me with, can I ask you a question? Is there a team that will be in the national championship discussion in mid-November that we're not talking about right now, that we're going to look back at and go, we are stupid for not talking about them on June 24th?
I think Ole Miss might be that.
Okay, so because I want to check those boxes on this show. I want to be able to go back and be like, in June 24th.
Yeah, we've talked about LSU. Like, Indiana's the one that I think people are sleeping on again. But we've talked about that. We talked with Clark Brooks about impact players and how many Indiana brings back. Like, we've talked about that. So I think Indiana being in the playoff hunt, being one of the better teams in the Big Ten, would not be the biggest surprise in the world.
Well, there's another team that we weren't scheduled to talk about that we have to acknowledge.
Okay.
You know who I'm going to say?
Nope.
Miami.
Oh, but we talked a ton about Miami.
I know, but I've talked negatively about Miami.
Have we? I don't think we've been that negative about Miami. I feel like, because we had the conversation of, are they too portal heavy at this point in Mario Cristobal's tenure? But I keep saying, yeah, they're portal heavy, but not in the trenches. Like, they're building in the trenches through homegrown players, and that seems to be where you need the homegrown players.
And they also have JoJo Trader, who I don't think people think much about right now, but is going to be a stud at receiver. Carson Beck, if healthy, is a manageable quarterback. They've got Charmar Brown, straight from the Pokemon card collection. Also can eat
and he doesn't have to be their starting tailback.
Yeah,
coming
right.
From
Xavier Lucas coming from Wisconsin. You guys have read enough about that to know that that's an important pickup.
We can talk about the Wisconsin-Miami lawsuit later.
Yeah. So. James Brockmeyer is a former, I believe, 5-star, or maybe his twin was. Nice interior line pickup. I feel like I wonder if I'm selling Miami short as a team that brought in 20 players to go with a pretty solid
Miami should be like, I had Miami in my projected playoff.
You do, yeah.
So
maybe I'm talking to myself.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm talking to myself, but I've kind of been like, Miami had their moment last year and they blew a generationally good offense and they lost all those players. And now it's hard to picture them being that good again. Maybe I'm off on that. I don't know. Or maybe they're going to be 8-4. I have no idea.
If only they played a really good team to start the season, that might give us an idea.
Yeah, and we're not talking about that team because we've talked about them quite a bit.
We've talked about Notre Dame a ton.
Yeah, Notre Dame we believe will be good. So, okay, let's go to the last one then, Andy.
The last one, this is a shot in the dark, and I don't know, but I'm just looking at the construction, and it looks familiar. Rich Rodriguez appears to be trying to do at West Virginia what Kurt Cignetti did at Indiana last year. 6 transfers from Jacksonville State. So not as many as Cignetti brought from James Madison to Indiana, but quite a few. And just a massive roster overhaul. Massive. Like, completely different team.
Are you ready for good West Virginia with Rich Rod again? How sweet would that be? That would be fun.
It would be crazy if they did it right. Like, if they were as good right off the bat as it's like he never left. Like, Remember 2007, they were almost going to play for the national title and they lost to Pitt, but they were one of the best teams in the country that year. Like,
oh yeah, I mean, there's a podcast that's discussed the video game.
Because clearly nobody's talking about West Virginia in terms of the Big 12 race, and understandably so. Because there's a lot of good teams coming back in the Big 12, a lot of great quarterbacks returning in the Big 12. We don't know what they're going to be at all. 49 transfers in, Ari. 49.
Yeah, and they're not allowed to dance on TikTok. I got to tell you something I'm a little embarrassed by and remorseful of. I've never seen a game in Morgantown. I've been to a basketball game there, but I've never been to a football game there.
I've only been to one game in Morgantown. I've been to Morgantown multiple times during practice to interview people. The only game I went to is the 2018 Oklahoma game, which was on Black Friday and was for a spot in the Big 12 championship game. It was a great game. The Oklahoma people will say, oh, they got a good call. The West Virginia people will say they got hosed by a hit out of bounds call late in the game. But that was Dana Holgers's best team in West Virginia. I remember walking out of the stadium that night, hearing the fans talk and being like, Dana's going to get the hell out of here because they're pissed and they don't seem to realize that it's like next year's team's not going to be better than this year's team.
Yeah. I like West Virginia, not the school. I like the state. It's very underratedly pretty.
Oh, it's beautiful. Did you see Ren Baker, the athletic director? I wish I had the tweet to send River. I'll try to find it. He sent a photo from his backyard of a rainbow over a river, like in a gorge. It was incredible.
I'm trying to Google that right now. I'm a big sucker for backyard. I mean, Lincoln Riley's backyard photo is still permanently undefeated, but I'd love to see it.
Yeah, Ren Baker, I think frequently posts these great backyard pictures, but you're not gonna say it's better than Lincoln Riley's backyard, and I'm not sure there are many people who would take anything over Lincoln Riley's backyard.
Oh, I see this. Is that his backyard? Are those mountains?
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's really pretty. There's a little. That's
not even the one. The one in the daytime is not even the really good one. There's one at sunset with a rainbow. I believe it's Ren Baker. It might be the president of the university, but I thought it was Ren Baker. Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Yeah, that's gorgeous.
Yeah, I see the rainbow one. That's a top 10 backyard view. For sure.
So, but West Virginia, one of the more interesting teams. There's the rainbow one. Yeah, one of the more interesting teams to me.
Is that a pool?
Yeah, I don't even know. I think that's a rain slicked deck.
No, that's a pool.
Is it a pool? Oh, even better.
Yeah.
All right, Ren Baker. Congratulations on the incredible backyard.
I'd get hammered back there.
Yeah, I see a fire pit and I've gotten Ari's fire pit started. So
yeah, it's also broken. So you're gonna have to fix that.
That's not my fault.
Not broken, but like last time I tried to turn it on.
Yeah, call the gas company. I ain't messing with gas.
The gas company is from a propane tank.
Yeah, but it's a gas. It's a device that uses gas.
I tried to turn it on for we had a Super Bowl party and everybody was coming over and I was going to turn it on as it was cold out, a nice welcome feature. The fireplace is on. You come to the front. People have some beers out there waiting for the game to start.
Yep.
And the flames coming out of it was like a flicker. And I was like, what? It's a really nice fire pit. It's in the front yard.
Did you just run out all your propane? You need to get a new propane tank? Just a refill?
How could I have possibly run out of it? I didn't turn it on.
I don't know.
The Super Bowl.
I wasn't there.
Turned it on the first time. I've never once even touched it.
Yeah. Well,
maybe I did.
Maybe you left the valve open.
I don't think I did.
We're letting propane out the whole time.
Maybe. I'm gonna work on that. I'll get back to you.
All right. One more team we didn't talk about. And we're not going to talk about them in the context of today's show because these were teams that we suspect are going to be significantly better. Or like with Oregon, they were already really good, could stay really good. But our friend Matt Jones from Kentucky Sports Radio, he's ready to fully embrace motivated Mark Stoops, and he's hoping now that Kentucky itself will embrace motivated Mark Stoops. The fan base at KSR, they kind of started this, and we had Nick Roush on before the Kentucky Derby. He was telling us about motivated Mark Stoops, and it's a message board thing at KSR where they kind of say it tongue in cheek. But Matt Jones makes a compelling case for Kentucky to fully embrace it. Show the video.
We said this last Friday. I'm all in on the motivated thing. I know it started as a joke. Mocking Mark Stoops. Now they got to lean into it.
Agreed.
Lean into it. That picture that the one dude made with him smoking the cigarette and having the bourbon, it's cool. I know it was used to make fun of him, but it's actually kind of cool. UK needs to lean into it. Motivated Mark Stoops might be all we have this year. So I'm for it. And I hope UK gets by it too.
Can you imagine if, as the Kentucky football team comes out of the tunnel game 1, that they just put the words motivated on the score? Like they're about to play Toledo, just motivated. How awesome would that be? It would be amazing.
It was funny, and it is funny. It won't be funny if they suck.
Yeah, but if you do it at the first game, you don't know if they do or not, so you don't have to worry about that. You have a week till Ole Miss shows up, and they did beat Ole Miss.
Their openers, Toledo.
Their openers, Toledo, at which actually that's also not a gimme. Like Toledo's usually pretty good in the MAC.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's not like they're not playing, Sacramento Northwest Community College.
Ari, I'm opening the apps here. I kind of want to know what the line is on Toledo, Kentucky, week 1.
These eyes.
I'm looking. I don't know if we have a Toledo, Kentucky line yet, but
12.5.
Oh no, producer River sees 10.5.
No crucial numbers crossed there. I think it's the same idea. It's 2 scores.
Yeah. Does that feel a little juicy to you? That feels a little juicy to me.
I mean, you're not a Zach Calzada believer?
I'm a Jason Candle believer.
Take the points. But Mark Stoops is motivated.
The question is Jason Candle more motivated?
Jason Candle, who's more motivated? Mark Stoops to prove that, he's back or never left, or Jason Candle to have another good year and get an awesome big job somewhere? I don't know.
Any other MAC school?
It's a hard MAC school team to play in the opener. I'm just saying, I wouldn't. You're like, put it up on the scoreboard, wear motivated Stoops t-shirts coming out of the tunnel. I'm not sure I'd mess around before that one.
Yeah,
that's a mess around and find out situation. So
this is another show, by the way, I think that we need to do in July of really sneaky games and lines.
Sure.
Because that's a sneaky game right there.
It's a sneaky game.
That is any other MAC school you want to open with. Not that one.
Yeah. Especially with Ole Miss just sitting there breathing down your neck, too.
Well, and yeah. I mean, look at Kentucky's early season sketch. That is brutal, by the way. So we've just discussed how tricky Toledo is. Ole Miss comes to Lexington. Then what's that third logo, Ari?
Well, that's Eastern Michigan, right?
That is Eastern Michigan.
You're not going to get me on MAC schools. Come on.
But then they're at South Carolina, at Georgia, and then Texas comes to town.
And then Tennessee, and then Auburn, and then Florida. Like, what
Barf.
are we looking at?
Barf. Mark Stoops better be highly, highly motivated. Highly motivated.
I'm going to see if I can try to find their over-under win. I don't see 4 wins there.
Listen.
Do you?
No.
Okay.
Especially if they drop Toledo, massive problems. Massive problems. It's 4.5 is their total. So let's schedule back at
4.5.
Let's find 5. Let's see if we can find 5. So Toledo, Eastern Michigan. Let's say that goes. You better hope Tennessee losing Nico is takes a serious downturn. They're going to beat Tennessee Tech. I don't know if they're going to beat Vanderbilt. Louisville finally beat them last year.
You could take Kentucky 200-1 to win the national title if you want.
There you go.
I'm going to put $1 on it.
I think you should. You should be highly motivated to put $1 on them. All right. Tomorrow's show. How many teams do we think will win the national title in the next 10 years, and what programs are they? Don't know if we're going to say Kentucky, but we are highly motivated, just like Mark Stoops. We'll talk to you tomorrow.